welcome to Lightning Learn. This is the second installment in the mini-series on ChamSys MagicQ. If you missed the first video, check out the link in the description where you can find the first video. There is also a link to a page where you will find everything you need to follow along with me, including the show file that has everything we did in the last video. Today is all about palettes, layouts, and more. Oh my! We'll talk about what palettes are and how to create them. We'll also explore how to create and edit layouts, and we'll even make use of the built-in plot window and see how it can help us create grouping and do more than we might have thought to be possible. So I think now is a great time to get started. The first thing I want to show you is the plot window. This window will help us out in creating our group palettes. What is really helpful about this window is that it gives us the ability to select different views, called elevations, such as front, side, and plot view. Front elevation, as you can see, is the plot of what the stage would look like if you were in the room looking directly at the stage. Side elevation is the plot of what you would see if you were on stage right outside of the room looking directly at the room. Lastly, plot elevation is the bird's eye view of the room. If you click on custom at this point, it defaults to plot elevation. For the sake of consistency, let's use plot elevation. You can press Shift on your keyboard or console and use a mouse scroll wheel to zoom in or out. If you don't have a mouse, you can also use the E encoder, which is the round encoder near the top right. To move around, you can also use the X and Y encoders or scroll with your mouse. If you're on a Mac, a Magic Mouse will allow you to scroll in either direction. Same goes for any laptop. Otherwise, you can use Control and scroll to move horizontally. Selecting heads is as easy as click and drag. To show you the next really cool feature, in the plot view window, I'll enable the visualizer and turn on the fixtures I've selected by pressing Locate, which will put the fixtures to their default values but brings the intensity to full. The first feature is called Focus on Target. When it is enabled, I can click and drag anywhere in the room and the fixtures will point to the spot and follow where I'm moving the mouse. As soon as I release the mouse, you'll notice that they'll stop following, and I'll need to reselect the fixtures if I clicked somewhere else. Then press the Focus on Target button again. Next, there is the Focus Line feature, which can be helpful when creating position palettes. All I need to do is make sure that I have my fixtures selected, click Focus Line, and I can click and drag the line wherever I want. The middle of the line has a circle which moves the line around the room. The two squares on either end of the line allow you to change the length of the line. And the circle at the top of the upside down T allows you to adjust the angle of the line. You can also use the X, Y, and F encoders to adjust the X, Y, and Z position of the line, and the B, C, and D encoders to adjust the Z rotation, that's forward and backward, Y rotation, that's up and down, and length of the line. You can also change the elevation to front and adjust the focus line there, especially if you want to have the Y position be at the top of the stage or even do something unique. There's one last thing I want to show you before we get into making our groups. The plot view has the ability to show you the heads that you want to see. If you deselect your heads by pressing clear and change your elevation to plot, you'll see that the A encoder says all heads. If you click the gray box next to the encoder on the bottom half, it will have a few different filter options. The first is Attach Object. This can be very helpful if you know which light you want and where it's hanging. The B encoder is where you can select any object, such as a different truss. You can also change the filter to group, which allows you to view heads by group. Next is selected heads, which none are selected at the moment. Next is floor heads, which shows the fixtures that are on the floor. And lastly, flown heads, which is everything that's in the air, such as on a truss or the house lights. So to get started on creating groups, let's change the filter to floor heads. I want to create 2 groups for now for these fixtures. They're going to be based on what type of fixture they are. If you remember in the first video, the front row of fixtures are beam wash fixtures. To make it easier for you to see what I'm selecting, I've enabled the visualizer and pressed highlight. We'll click and drag from left to right on the downstage row of fixtures, which are the beam wash fixtures. Then we'll press GRP, which takes me to the group window. To record that group, I'll press REC, or record, and select an empty slot in the group window. I can then name that group by pressing Set, clicking on the new group, and giving it a name that'll help me remember what those are, such as Floor Beam Wash. I'll press Clear, then Highlight, then repeat those steps with the spots in the upstage row of lights. These are my floor spots. If you don't want to clear the programmer each time and have to re-enable highlight mode, you can also deselect the fixtures by clicking on just one fixture 3 times. The first time deselects the fixture from the selection. The second time only selects the fixture, and the third time will deselect it. Now I'll change the filter to flown heads and repeat the process. I'll click and drag the selection box over truss 1, which has wash fixtures. Then I'll press GRP or group, record to an open spot, and set a name for it. So I realized that I forgot to type what type of fixtures are in the Truss 1 group. Although it may not be important for everyone, it's good practice to make sure that you know what each group is before you use it. So how might you go about changing the name? That's easy. Just press Set, then select a group you'd like to rename. In this case, I just want to add the word wash to the end, so I'll press Edit Last. Use my arrow keys to go to the end and add the word wash to its name. Now let's deselect by clicking on a fixture in Truss 2 3 times, and move on to Truss 3. I'll select the fixtures, press Group, record to an empty spot, and set a name, and repeat this process on the rest of the trusses. while I'm doing this, you might notice that I'm putting my groups in different spots. I'm arranging my groups by fixture type. So I'm putting the wash fixtures on top, my spot fixtures on the next row, and my profile fixtures on the next row. However, I've decided to have the floor fixtures together. But I messed up once more. I put the profile fixtures in the same row as the spots. So how do I move it? I'll show you 2 ways to move a palette. The first way is by pressing Move, selecting the palette you want to move, then selecting the spot you want to put it. In a little bit I'll show you the drag and drop method, but first I'll finish making the groups. For the house lights, I don't plan on splitting them up right now, but I always like to make sure that I make a separate group for them, even though the console already did that. I'll end up keeping the default groups, but burying them out of sight. This way, if I want to get all of one type of fixture, I can select them all in one go if I want to. To move multiple palettes in one go, you can use the method I showed you, but by first selecting the palettes, which in this case are the groups, that you want to move. Then pressing Move, then using the arrow keys to scroll down a little bit and select an empty spot just out of view for when we're scrolled up. I told you that there's a second method to moving things in MagicQ, so I'll show you how to use it. This method is called drag and drop, and it's helpful for when you want to quickly move multiple items to multiple different spots. To enable drag and drop, press Shift, then Move. If you're on PC, you can press and hold Shift and click Move, but if you're in programming shortcuts on a PC, you can press and hold Shift and press M. Then you can click and drag the groups to wherever you want them to go. The group won't show in its new spot until you release the mouse, or if you're on a touchscreen or console, lift your finger from the screen. When you're done, press Move again to exit drag and drop mode. Now let's create some position palettes. In most cases, the default 9 palettes won't work in every scenario when programming. So we'll create some new palettes for this show. To start, select Truss 1 Wash and locate them. Remember that locate sets the fixtures to the default values, white, no gobo, default zoom, and center position, and then sets the intensity to 100%, all at once. Then I'll adjust the tilt by moving the Y encoder to point the fixtures downstage a little. Here, let me adjust the visualizer so you can see what it looks like. I can then press Fan and adjust the pan by moving the X encoder, and the fixtures will go in or out of the stage depending on which way I move the encoder. Once I'm happy with where I am pointing that group, I'll record into an empty spot in the position window, just like before. Then I can name the palette by pressing Set and calling it T1W Fan Out for Truss 1 Wash Fan Out. Now I want to create a slight fan in palette, but I want to use the focus line feature that I showed you a little bit ago. So I'll make sure that group is still selected, and then I'll press Plot, and then Focus Line. I'll first move the line to about where I want it. Then I'll change the elevation to front so I can set the Y position to where the floor is, give or take, on the stage. Then I can adjust the length of the line to get that slight fan in. Once I'm happy with the position, I'll press Lay 1, which takes me to Layout 1, and record that into the position window using the same method as before and naming it T1W Fan In. I'll then make one more palette for this group. I want these to be straight on and slightly downstage. Once I'm happy with the position, I'll record and name it. Now I'll press Clear and select Truss 3 Wash and press Locate to locate them. Once I do so, you'll notice that the new position palettes are grayed out when I selected a different group. That's because each palette is specific to the fixtures that were selected when I recorded the palette. So let's make some palettes for this group. First, I'm going to move the palettes I've already created, and then I'll start building ones for these fixtures and some of the others. While I'm doing this, you might have noticed that I can create a palette position for multiple groups. I can use that palette on just one of them or both at the same time. That's because that palette applies to the fixtures I'd selected when I made that palette. After creating one of my floor palettes, I decided I don't really like my FLBW fan in palette. So I'll show you how to change it. All you need to do is set the fixtures into a new position that you can see yourself using, and then press record, click on the palette that you want to change. It'll ask you if you're sure you want to merge the palette entry, and you can select yes. Then I'll rename the palette so that it makes sense to me. We can use the same palettes to create and adjust color palettes, which is where we're going next. This being the case, when you're programming, you're probably going to find yourself using a lot of the built-in options, which are based on the fixtures you've patched in. But I also know that there are going to be colors that you might use on a regular basis that aren't there, such as color temperature adjusted whites. In most cases, you'll need to see in person what the fixtures look like when making sure that this works properly. But since this is a fictitious venue, I'll be okay with guessing. I want to show you the color picker window and how it works. So go ahead and select all the fixtures and press locate, then hit the white palette. Once you do that, toward the top of the screen press color picker. You'll get a window that looks like this. Something you will notice is several triangles which represent the color space each fixture is able to produce. Now keep in mind that these measures aren't always accurate, and you might find discrepancies, but this is the window where you will set your color temperature or even a specified color for any scene you want to build. So just like any palette, when you record a palette, it records for the fixtures you've selected. So I'll select each type of fixture, then record and name. If you want to set a color temperature, simply type the temperature number, then click the box below the temp slider. This technique works for all of those sliders. You might notice that on the fixtures that use CMY mixing, the color picker may not work all that great, since it's designed mostly for fixtures that use colored diodes such as red, green, and blue. Some fixtures may also include white, amber, lime, and or others. But in the color window, rather than the color mix, you can adjust the A, B, and C encoders to mix cyan, magenta, and yellow to create the color that you want. a side note, I asked an AI bot what CMY values would produce a 4200 Kelvin white, since that's what I set my other fixtures to for the example. And in case you're wondering, it said cyan at 30%, magenta at 38%, and yellow at 50%. If you've tried that and it worked well in real life, let me know in the comments. Now we can build a look using the palettes we built. Check it out. Lastly, I wanted to go over layouts and building them. If I'm being perfectly honest, I believe that ChamSys has done a great job with the default layout being the 4 windows arranged in the way that you see group, position, color, and beam, since those are the windows that most people will use the most. That being said, you may want a second layout for playback, for example. So toward the bottom of your screen, to the left of the number pad, in the middle row, you'll see buttons that say Lay 1, Lay 2, and Lay 3. Those are your layout buttons for layouts 1, 2, and 3. You can also press Shift, and they'll act as buttons for layouts 4, 5, and 6. On PC, you can also use the menu bar to get up to 12 layouts. And if you're on a Stadium console, you have 48 different layouts. So, how do we create these layouts? Well, to start, let's go to Layout 2 by pressing Lay 2. You'll notice that it's blank and nothing is there. That means we have a blank canvas to build our second layout. For this layout, we'll plan on it being a playback layout. We'll have 2 windows open, the Q stack and the execute window. In a later video, we'll explain those 2 windows, but for now, we're just creating these layouts for both practice and for getting the show file ready for the next few videos. So let's start by clicking Q stack. The window opened up in full screen by default. The blue title bar has 2 buttons at the top right, an X and a box with a line through it. We'll click the box and a window with options will show up. You can have the window be either on the top or bottom half, or on the left or right side, or in one of 4 quadrants. In a little bit, I'll show you the bottom set of options where you see the split into 8 windows. But for this layout, let's put the window on the right half. And then we'll click the EXEC button to open the execute window and put it on the left half. Once you're happy with the layout, press record and then click Layout 2. Now let's go to Layout 3 and build a hybrid layout that will be for playback and the ability to make on-the-fly adjustments. To do this, we'll explore the bottom set of options for the window placement. In Layout 3, it's again blank. So let's press Group for the group window, and then hit the window menu. Now hit the upper left box in the part where you see the screen split 8 ways. Now you might have noticed that it went full screen. Don't worry, you didn't mess up. That's how this section works. Now, let's do that for the position window to place it below the group window. Then the same for the color, and then beam windows. Now the 4 windows are stacked on top of each other. But what if you want the Q stack in the upper right corner and the execute on the bottom corner? Do you just place them in the corners like this? Nope. Instead, place them on the other side of the 8 in the top 2 options, and they'll resize themselves automatically like this. Once you're happy with this layout, go ahead and press record and click Layout 3. Now we can go between layouts depending on our needs and have just what we need for the situation that we could be in. Before we go, I wanted to show you one more setting. Since I filmed the last video, I started making one change to a setting in each show file. So, go ahead and press the setup and go to the Prog tab. The third option down says Unused chans return to default. The default setting is heads without intensity only, but we'll change that to yes, all heads. What that will do is return all cleared fixtures to their defaults when they're cleared. It's just like locate, but sets the intensity to 0 instead of full. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you found this information to be helpful. If you haven't done so yet, please subscribe and follow me on social media at Lightning by Zeb. I post fixture reviews, tips and tricks videos, and more. See you next time!